do have a national security problem. And we have been having this problem for some time. The governments of the various countries are having a challenge in finding some solutions to this problem. It goes back to what we spoke about in terms of development. Do people feel that they have access to higher education where they can make something of themselves? Do people feel as if the resources are equitably distributed for everyone? How much of this affects security within a country like Jamaica, for example? How much of this affects whether or not we feel safe? How much of this affects what we need to do to survive? You will recall when we were speaking about human development that people must feel as if they are empowered. People must feel as if they have a stake in what is happening within their country. All right? Now, people are expressing here how they feel when they look around their communities. They do not necessarily see or feel that they are safe, either by the security forces or by their political representatives who are supposed to be representing them. There is also an issue in terms of sex and how women in particular feel in terms of security. Do we feel as if we are targeted, especially young women? Are we protected by the society? Do the laws of our countries protect us? These are the questions that are being asked. There's a particular situation in the inner city, rural, urban areas where people live in a kind of situation that does not necessarily lend itself to security based on what they're able to afford, based on their levels of education, based on their access to resources. So, were you able to identify the major challenge in the video so far? Okay, you guessed it. The major challenge identified in this video is crime. And it is indeed a major challenge in countries like Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago. But how does crime really affect development? What is the link that is there? There are several things. For example, lower levels of productivity, strain on the healthcare system. The ministries of national security of the various countries have to have a large cut in the budget for national security when this money could have been rerouted into areas like education to give people greater access. So what you do have is that the resources of the country are spent in ways that could be better spent if we did not have high levels of crime. All right? So here's a question from a past paper that we could look at. For a named Caribbean country, discuss what are the main challenges to its development. And it would be useful if you do not choose Jamaica. We are doing Caribbean studies, and your knowledge of other Caribbean countries would be of benefit to you. All right, so what are these factors in general then which hinder or promote development? We have a number of them here. Gender inequality, political ideologies, distribution of wealth and resources, entrepreneurship and productivity, natural and human-made disasters, which is a real issue in the Caribbean because we are islands and we are prone every year to disasters coming out of the hurricane season, for example. The quality of education and relevance, the levels of crime, which we just discussed, the global economic conditions and external shocks and tourism. Let us zero in just a little bit there on global economic conditions. What do we mean by global economic conditions? The Caribbean does not exist in a space on its own. We live in a global world. Therefore, whatever happens outside of our space affects us as well. And in some cases, it affects us even more because we as Caribbean states are vulnerable to many of the economic conditions. We are not able to have the kind of comeback that larger economies have. So we have to be careful. So we are vulnerable to any situation that may arise in other parts of the world that could disrupt the way how things normally are. We have had several of these situations in the past. Whenever there is a global economic downturn, which is what we call a recession, then it affects the Caribbean countries. It affects our output. An example of this would be the formation of OPEC in the 1970s. You recall what OPEC is? OPEC refers to the grouping of countries that are oil producing in the world. And they have a big stake in the way how inflation rates and the value of a country's dollar is decided. There are other things too, such as political instability in different parts of the world. We have had political instability here in the region, in Latin America. In Venezuela, for example, we have had political instability that has caused us to, have to pay attention. As you know, Caribbean countries have an agreement with Venezuela, the Petrocaribe Agreement, which allows us to purchase oil today and pay for it tomorrow, in layman terms. So we have had this agreement for some time, but this agreement was threatened when the Venezuelan president, Hugo Chavez, died. And he was the person who we made that agreement with. So since then, this country has had political instability, and this has affected the way how we do business. And it has, in fact, affected oil prices throughout the Caribbean. There are other kinds of political instability in other parts of the world that was close to home. How about the invasion of Iraq in 2004 by the United States? What happened here was a ripple effect. Several countries became involved in this situation. Countries that we do business with, countries that we trade with. The European Union, for example, had a big stake in what happened here. And we have trading with the European Union. So these kinds of conditions affect what happens to us in the Caribbean and our development. Global recession. In 2008, the entire world was affected by a global recession, and that also affected us in the Caribbean. Now we turn to something that is very, very controversial as a factor that either hinders or promotes, you decide, development in the Caribbean, and that is tourism. It should be perhaps obvious. Tourism in the Caribbean is very, very important. In fact, we do not survive without tourism in the Caribbean. It is, did you know that it is the single largest worldwide sector, and it earns as much as $9 trillion per year. It is the biggest foreign exchange earner for the Caribbean countries, in particular Jamaica, the Bahamas, Trinidad, Antigua, all of the Caribbean countries. It's very important that we have tourism. We have other kinds of industries: sugar, bananas, oil in Trinidad, and several other kinds of industries. Remittances also help us quite a bit in the Caribbean. But tourism, we depend on tourism. So the question is, as a citizen of a Caribbean country, can you determine one challenge that your country faces in regards to the sector? If it brings in so much money for the Caribbean and we are so dependent on it, how then can it pose a challenge? It poses a challenge in the first place because we are too dependent on tourism. And we have not yet found a way to diversify our economies in such a way that we are not as dependent. So when anything happens, then we feel it in the Caribbean. Take, for example, there is an external shock right now that is a challenge to tourism. Can you guess what that is? Yes, we all have guessed it. The COVID-19 situation. It has posed a serious challenge to tourism. Now, if you have been following the news, if you have been paying attention, you would realize that our cruise system has really been, affected Because of it, we are also having less visitors to the island because of it. People are quarantined, they have to stay in, they are not able to interact and to visit the different sites like the Duns River and Mystic Mountain and those kinds of things. So what are we having as a country? Less money is coming into the country. Well needed foreign exchange we're losing because of this external shock. And this is what makes us susceptible in the Caribbean. There are other issues too, other challenges with tourism. For example, there's a high degree of foreign ownership resulting in some repatriation of the profits. So some of the all-inclusive fixtures are not necessarily owned by us in Jamaica. They are owned by foreign entities, and some of the profits are repatriated. This sector is also exploitative by nature, and it is very dependent, and it erodes our environment. Beach erosion, destruction of coral reefs, all of these are things that we face as challenges to tourism. There's still too much reliance on the all-inclusive brand. We need to diversify, we need to branch out into heritage tourism, into sport tourism, and many different kinds of tourism that are available. Community tourism, for example, is a good way to branch out for Caribbean people. So, what do we need to do as Caribbean people? We need to pay attention and diversify our economies so that we are better able to manage these external shocks. So that when things like this happen, that we don't have any kind of control over, we are better able to manage ourselves. We are still able to provide for our people in the country, and we are able to live and develop. All right? So those are the challenges to tourism. When we come back from the break, which we're going on now, we are going to go into looking at a past paper challenge. See you after this break. School's still not out.
Reduce your risk of viral illnesses like the flu and coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water. Cover your nose and mouth when coughing with a tissue and dispose of it. Avoid close contact with anyone with a cold or flu-like symptoms. If you become ill, please visit your doctor or the nearest health center and share your travel history. The flu and coronavirus can kill. Let's protect each other. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Getting sick by washing your hands after coughing or sneezing, when caring for the sick, before, during, and after you prepare food, before eating, after toilet use, when hands are visibly dirty, and after handling animals or animal waste. COVID-19 tip: protect yourself and others from getting sick by washing your hands after coughing or sneezing, when caring for the sick, before, during, and after you prepare food, before eating, after toilet use, when hands are visibly dirty, and after handling animals or animal waste. COVID-19 tip: protect yourself and others from getting sick by washing your hands after coughing or sneezing, when caring for the sick, before, during, and after you prepare food, before eating, after toilet use, when hands are visibly dirty, and after handling animals or animal waste.
Welcome back to School's Not Out for Cape Caribbean Studies. And as we promised, we are going to be looking at a past paper question. Typical kind of question for this kind of topic. For a named Caribbean country, discuss what are the main challenges to its development. So if you will recall, we just looked at a long list of some of the challenges to Caribbean development. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, I'm going to go with Jamaica and I am going to choose Jamaica and look at some of the obvious things. Now it may be useful to look at another country. So while you contemplate that, let us begin to brainstorm how it is that we would answer such a question before we actually begin to answer the question. Now, it's important to brainstorm because what you do is you begin to think about the answer before you begin to write. This helps in your organization of the paper. You want to brainstorm, you want to jot down any ideas that come to mind, and this works for if you're sitting in the exam or if you have an essay to write before. You want to sit down and you want to think about what are the things that I could possibly put into this question. Well, first of all, you'd want to determine what country you're going to be using. And it's very important to explicitly state which Caribbean country you are using to answer the question. You also want to just jot down those ideas. You do not necessarily want to write them down in any particular format, just as they come to you. You also want to write down any key terms and concepts, such as the ones we have been looking at: development, sustainable development, and those kinds of concepts that relate to the question. So after you have done your brainstorming now, you want to begin your writing process. How do you do your writing process? Okay, so you will write an introduction after you have written, you have done your brainstorming, and then you want to go into the body of it. And you can use this particular structure to write any paper, not just Caribbean Studies. So you want to use the peel process. And the peel process says point, explanation, example, and link. Simple. So you simply make the point. You explain what you mean, give some more details. You want to give some examples, and we are not short of examples because we're doing Caribbean Studies. And then, of course, you have a linking sentence to ensure that you are actually answering the question. This process you repeat for every sentence, for every paragraph, after the introductory paragraph and before the conclusion. So this is a kind of process that you can use to write any essay, as a matter of fact. All right? So you may have been thinking about Jamaica. I wasn't going down that road. I was actually thinking of using Haiti. Why not Haiti? Because we are then able to pick some of the other kinds of challenges and factors that hinder development that we perhaps were not able to go through in detail. And as you know, Haiti is a very peculiar situation. You can't run out of things to say. Please take note that this kind of question is a 30-mark question. So you are looking at nothing less than 5 to 6 pages to answer a question like this. And you're not short of material if you choose a country like Haiti. So what would be some of the challenges that you would be looking at if you're choosing a country like Haiti? Okay, so you want to look at natural and man-made disasters or human-made disasters. And this is a real issue for Haiti. We're not short on examples. Haiti is prone to these natural and human-made disasters. Haiti is prone to earthquakes because of where it sits in the Caribbean, right along the fault line, or the fault line. One of the fault lines travel right along the northern part of Haiti. It also is more times than not directly in the path of any hurricane that is passing through the Caribbean area. So you want to look at those kinds of disasters. There are also human-made disasters, such as the level of deforestation that Haiti has had since its independence in 1804. Because the country was unable to trade with other partners of the world, they were forced to use and overuse their resources. So what obtains in Haiti is that there is a high level of deforestation. Only about 2% of the forest area of Haiti remains. So now it's in a process of, reforestation, replanting trees and educating its citizens about destroying the environment in that kind of way. And then you want to look at government policies and political ideologies and corruption and those kinds of things. Over time, Haiti has had a series of political persons who have plundered the country since its independence. And this has also led to Haiti being the particular situation that it is in now. Global economic conditions, some of the same ones that we have looked at. Haiti is no stranger to this. And you would appreciate that it would also affect Haiti perhaps in a stronger way than some of the other Caribbean countries whose economies are not as bad as Haiti. And then you will have unequal distribution of resources. It is true that there is a 1% of the population of Haiti who have access, and yet the majority of the population do not have access to basic resources. Some of the same SDGs that we mentioned earlier: clean water, zero hunger, no poverty. These are realities that do not exist in Haiti. They are still at the moment recovering from an earthquake, recovering from outbreaks of diseases like cholera, and now we have COVID-19. And the possibility is that it could affect Haiti, given their current situation, even more than it does other Caribbean countries who are able to use the resources that they have to buffer this kind of situation. So Haiti is an ideal country to use as an example for a question like this. All right, so you would follow the peel process, and you would use the peel process to interject some of the details that were just mentioned. So how do you write an introduction? Let's go back to that just a little bit. Your introduction is really an appetizer to the main course. So you want to ensure that right off the bat, you wow the examiner. It must include things like background information. So you may want to talk about Haiti's history, a little bit about Haiti's history, and them having achieved independence through a revolution that lasted from 1791 to 1804. And you may also want to explain the economic implications of that. They were forced to be on their own while repaying huge sums of money to France. And this caused them to be in a particular situation like no other country in the Caribbean. And I know it is very, very easy for you to say Haiti is, not a good country, and, we make all kinds of disparaging remarks about them. But the fact is that there are some conditions, some situations that have mitigated against them being more developed than they are. All right. So then you want to go further down to define your key terms and concepts. You want to say, what do you mean by development? What is development? What is that? And you may want to mention economic development, human development, sustainable development. And Haiti has a particular situation and problem as it relates to sustainable development, because they have not been able to use the resources of their country in a way that future generations are able to benefit. And then you want to go on to your thesis statement. What is your thesis statement? A question like this asks you to really take a position. You need to say, in a country like Haiti, there are several challenges to its development. And then you want to say what those challenges are, because these challenges help you also to write the rest of the paper, the peel process that we were talking about earlier. All right? You want to communicate your information in a way that is readable and that is logical. So your command of the English language for a subject like Caribbean studies is extremely important. Ensure that you are using proper grammar and expression. Pay attention to your punctuation. Pay attention to how you construct your sentences and how you begin your paragraphs. No lengthy run-on sentences. Correct spelling. Language must be argumentative where possible and where necessary. And most of the questions for Caribbean studies lend themselves to a kind of argumentative kind of discussion rather than expository. So you want to ensure that your information is communicated in a proper way. No bullet points. You are expected to write full sentences that make sense. You want to ensure that your paper also reads at the Cape level. So you don't want to have too many ideas in one sentence and they're jumbled and high flown and convoluted. You are mixing your metaphors and those kinds of things. You want to ensure that your arguments are flowing logically from one point to another. And then of course you want to conclude. You want to ensure that you have just a review of the main points that you have made, and then you want to finish off with a repetition of your thesis statement. So that is essentially what you need to do in terms of writing a paper like this for Cape Caribbean Studies. So you may want to rethink which country you would use next time to answer a question like this. All right, so we are going to go for another break now. And remember, you can send your questions and receive feedback right now to us on Twitter at Television Jam, on Facebook at Television Jamaica, and Television Jamaica's YouTube channel using the hashtag TVJ Schools Not Out. We go for a final break and then we'll be back accepting your questions.
Reduce your risk of viral illnesses like the flu and coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water. Cover your nose and mouth when coughing with a tissue and dispose of it. Avoid close contact with anyone with a cold or flu-like symptoms. If you become ill, please visit your doctor or the nearest health center and share your travel history. The flu and coronavirus can kill. Let's protect each other. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Reduce your risk of viral illnesses like the flu and coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water. Cover your nose and mouth when coughing with a tissue and dispose of it. Avoid close contact with anyone with a cold or flu-like symptoms. If you become ill, please visit your doctor or the nearest health center and share your travel history. The flu and coronavirus can kill. Let's protect each other. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
COVID-19 tip. Protect yourself and others from getting sick by washing your hands after coughing or sneezing, when caring for the sick, before, during, and after you prepare food, before eating, after toilet use, when hands are visibly dirty, and after handling animals or animal waste. COVID-19 tip. Protect yourself and others from getting sick by washing your hands after coughing or sneezing, when caring for the sick, before, during, and after you prepare food, before eating, after toilet use, when hands are visibly dirty, and after handling animals or animal waste.
Reduce your risk of viral illnesses like the flu and coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water. Cover your nose and mouth when coughing with a tissue and dispose of it. Avoid close contact with anyone with a cold or flu-like symptoms. If you become ill, please visit your doctor or the nearest health center and share your travel history. The flu and coronavirus can kill. Let's protect each other. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Reduce your risk of viral illnesses like the flu and coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water. Cover your nose and mouth when coughing with a tissue and dispose of it. Avoid close contact with anyone with a cold or flu-like symptoms. If you become ill, please visit your doctor or the nearest health center and share your travel history. The flu and coronavirus can kill. Let's protect each other. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
COVID-19 tip. Protect yourself and others from getting sick by washing your hands after coughing or sneezing, when caring for the sick, before, during, and after you prepare food, before eating, after toilet use, when hands are visibly dirty, and after handling animals or animal waste. COVID-19 tip. Protect yourself and others from getting sick by washing your hands after coughing or sneezing, when caring for the sick, before, during, and after you prepare food, before eating, after toilet use, when hands are visibly dirty, and after handling animals or animal waste. COVID-19 tip. Protect yourself and others from getting sick by washing your hands after coughing or sneezing, when caring for the sick, before, during, and after you prepare food, before eating, after toilet use, when hands are visibly dirty, and after handling animals or animal waste. COVID-19 tip. Protect yourself and others from getting sick by washing your hands after coughing or sneezing, when caring for the sick, before, during, and after you prepare food, before eating, after toilet use, when hands are visibly dirty, and after handling animals or animal waste.
Welcome back to Schools Not Out, Cape Caribbean Studies. So while we were on the break, a question came in and somebody is asking from Portmore for me to elaborate, for me to explain some more of the factors that would hinder or promote development, and then relate those factors to Jamaica instead of Haiti. So let's go. There are several other factors that were named. Gender inequality, for example. Gender inequality is a big issue across the Caribbean, not just in Jamaica, because we have inherited a lot of the ethnocentric and Eurocentric ideals. So one of those is, of course, patriarchy. And so we still, by and large, live in a country where there's still quite a bit of patriarchy. It may not be as obvious and as overt as it used to be once in our history, but it still exists. Now, there are females, for example, when you look at the workplace, who can attest to the fact that they may have the same qualifications or even better qualifications than some of the males, and yet they may not get that one top spot that is available, that managerial spot. So when you look at it, our statistics show that at the very head of companies in Jamaica, we still have males, even when males are not necessarily as qualified as the females. So you will have the women right in that second layer there that is just below the CEO of the particular company. When you look at the ratio of male to female in our parliament, for example, it has grown over the years, yet we still do not have the kind of ratio that we would want as a democratic country, as a country that is moving towards, swiftly towards development. All right, so gender inequality as well, this may be debatable. Is it still existing in our education system, for example? And we can go right into that now as another factor. Let's look at that factor, the quality and relevance of education. In Jamaica, we are looking now mainly at tertiary education to answer this kind of question, because by and large we have primary education and secondary education available to all, but we are now at tertiary education. When we look at the numbers in terms of the enrollment, male and female, in our universities and colleges, and go a little further, graduation dates, we look at those numbers and we see that the numbers are not on par, somehow there. So that means that somehow we have flipped the switch, because at one point it used to be that the females were the ones who did not have as much access. But now, for whatever reason, and these reasons are very controversial, from as far back as Errol Miller and his male marginalization thesis, these reasons are controversial. Why is it that we have the society, in the society where males seem not to be accessing education, tertiary education, in the same way that females are accessing? Is it our culture? And this is one kind of theory that has been put forth. Culture has a lot to do with it. In Jamaica, we say when you are at a certain age, man should go and work. They should go and feed their family. They should be getting a job rather than moving on to tertiary education. And this is precisely part of the problem. Now, when we look at quality and relevance of education, there are some other things that come into play. And these things, again, are linked to gender inequality and gender equality, for that matter. When we look at single-sex schools as opposed to, co-ed schools, the subject offerings in these two different kinds of schools, when you look at female schools, single-sex schools, for example, what are the kinds of subjects that are being offered for females? Are the schools opening up and allowing females to do, technical drawing and, engineering and those kinds of things? Do we have that happening? Or are we still skewing our males and females into traditional types of careers that we think females should have and males should have, right? And so these are some questions that relate to quality and relevance of education. We again need to look at rural versus urban. How many people from rural are able to access tertiary education as opposed to rural persons? How many? when we look at those kinds of factors, and our economic and social surveys could give us more insight as to how these things are trending in Jamaica. So the extent to which we have gender equality and the extent to which we have a better kind of quality of education, those are the kinds of things that we look at in terms of determining the extent to which we are developing. Now, we have made some headway in terms of our curriculum. We are always looking at our curriculum and trying to find ways to ensure that our curriculum meets the needs of all the learners. And of course, we test as we go along. So by and large, the quality of our education system in Jamaica has grown, has improved quite a lot, and more people now have access to education. Very quickly, we could look at the distribution of wealth and resources in the country. How many people have access to wealth and resources? Is it still a top 1% or top 2%? Are people able to access all kinds of jobs? And this again is linked to the quality and relevance of education. Now we can look at, for example, the Students' Loan Bureau and its offerings. Each time the government puts forth another kind of policy, opening up the student loan so that persons can have access. And so even non-traditional areas now, you are able to access funding to have a tertiary education. And so in that regard, and even when you look at interest rates trending down, persons are able to access loans for education, and a lot more persons are accessing higher education. So this speaks well for our country in terms of development. Now the question coming out of that, after we have educated all of these persons, how many persons are able to find jobs or create jobs? And this now goes into entrepreneurship and productivity. And we have been trending towards having people creating their own jobs. That is what we do now in Jamaica. So generally speaking, as a country, we have made a lot of strides in terms of promoting development. So it was wonderful speaking with you today on Schools Not Out for Cape Caribbean Studies, and we have been looking at development as a whole, concepts, indicators, and factors that promote or hinder development. I am Melissa Beckford Simpson, sharing with you today. I do hope that you have learned a lot, and if you've missed this lesson, you can request it in our tutorial, which repeats on Saturday at 1 p.m. This and other programs in the Schools Not Out series will be available on video on demand on onespotmedia.com. Thank you. It was wonderful sharing with you today. Schools still not out.